Hey guys, so I am out on the cliffs in Pacifica. This is a place I've painted before, and it's close to home. It's kind of the end of the day here, but I'm trying to explore and come up with something, a composition that I haven't done before. So I'm just sort of walking around exploring. When I first started painting, I never looked at the shadows on the ground as possible compositional devices, but I think it's really helpful to do that. For some reason, they can kind of get overlooked. I don't think I've shown you guys my wet panel carrier. This is it's made by Raymar, and this is 16 by 20. So I've got a 16 by, I'm not sure what this is, like a 16 by 14, and then a 16 by 20. And you can carry 3 16 by 20s in here. It's not cheap. These things are like 80 bucks or something after you pay tax and shipping, but definitely very helpful. Okay, so that's the composition, and I'm going to start laying in the darks. Okay, so I'm not trying to be too careful here. I'm just putting in a bunch of random branches. Most of these are going to get covered when I put in the pine needles or whatever you call them, the greenery. But it's just having these branches in there. Some of them are going to remain, and you know, I want them to be irregular and spontaneous. I don't want them to be too careful. And this may or may not work. We'll see. Using a mixture of alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. Sun's getting low in the sky right now, so it's kind of blinding, but I'm just going to keep going. But let me show you what I got. All right, so I got the tree shape, and now I'm going to put in the brightest light, which is that sun up in the sky here, and then there's some glare on the water. Those are the brightest spots in the painting, so I want to put those in first, and then I'm going to key the whole painting to those brights. If that makes sense. So that's the next step. All right, so I put yellow with white. These are the brightest areas here. Again, it's the sun and then the glare on the water. And now I'll start putting in the water and the sky. All right, so I think one of the biggest challenges for beginning painters is using enough paint. Oftentimes, and this was the case with me, when I was starting out, I would squeeze out these little bits of paint and then barely use any of it. Problem with this is that it's easier for your colors to get muddy when they're on the panel or canvas, and also they're just not as saturated. You know, a thick dollop of paint just seems more saturated than a thin layer. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to show my palette while I'm mixing up the water, the color for the water and the sky, so you can kind of get an idea of what how much paint I use. All right, so I'm mixing a combination. I've got ultramarine blue here and a little bit of cerulean hue and quite a bit of titanium white, and then I'm going to add some burnt sienna, which kind of leads it towards kind of a dull green, and that'll be a good good place to start. And you can see there's, you know, there's a fair amount of paint on there. And I'm mixing in some liquid, and I'll just test it up there. Okay, so it needs to be a little bit darker, a little bit greener. It's interesting how the this burnt sienna mixed with blue will make a nice kind of pale aqua. All right, so the sun is going down, so I'm gonna pack up, but let me show you what I finished with. All right, so basically just trying to get an interesting tree shape and a believable feeling of light. All right, guys, so as usual, thanks for coming along on the journey. Leave any questions or comments down below. And as usual, big shout out or thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you want to help pitch in to support the channel, it's much appreciated. There's a link to my Patreon page down below. Other than that, have a good one, and I will see you in the next video.